All right, I want to start by asking you a question. Did any of you have a COVID show? You know what I mean? Like a show you just really got into in COVID. You never really watched it before. Maybe you re-watched or whatever. You guys remember COVID? Y'all remember that? Yeah. We're at the 5-year mark here, and 5 years ago, we were all binge watching everything we could get on the screen at that point. The COVID show, it's that show that you had never really seen before, but now that you were just sitting around doing nothing for months, you decided, I'm gonna pick up some new shows. Some of you rewatched all of The Office. Yeah, some of you just laughed, right? That was you. Some of you watched Seinfeld for the first time. I wanna say, I don't mean an episode, like all 9 seasons. You just watched it in a night. Some of you caught up in all things Star Wars over that season. Some of you dove deep into the Marvel universe in that season. I had a couple of COVID shows. I had a couple shows I got into. I got deep into them. One of them was Lone Star Law. This is the best show you've never heard of. Lone Star Law is a reality show that follows Texas game wardens as they bust people for the high crimes like hunting without a license or fishing on private property. It's kind of like, that's why I was like, this is kind of like Cops for hillbillies. I was there for it, man. I loved it. So I got into, Lone Star Law. The other show I got into big time over COVID was the show Alone. You guys ever seen Alone or maybe heard of this show? Guys, is this not the greatest tagline of any show you've ever seen? I don't know if you can read it. It says, if the isolation doesn't get you, the Grizzlies will. As soon as I saw that, you better believe I grabbed my popcorn. I'm in. And by the way, I'm Team Grizzly as I'm watching. So in the show Alone, men and women they're thrown into this contest to see who can survive the longest in the wilderness. In the show, the producers of the show, they actually give them a list of 40 items that they're allowed to bring in with them, but they can only choose 10 of them. You only take 10 items with you. And then they're just dropped off all by themselves, completely and utterly alone in the middle of nowhere. And when I say the middle of nowhere, I don't mean like Clinton County, Pennsylvania nowhere, where if you just walk 12 miles, you'll end up in Lock Haven and you can grab some groceries. I'm talking about they were dropping them off 125 miles inside the Arctic Circle. That kind of nowhere. They actually launched a spin-off show from Alone called Alone, the Beast. That was the tag. They did this in 2020. It gets even better. This spin-off show, it got even crazier because now they dropped off contestants in the middle of nowhere, except this time, the contestants couldn't take anything with them. Just the clothes on their back. All they had was the clothes on their back and the moose that the producers had slaughtered to give them, right? Bad day for the moose, but that's just what it was. They gave them a moose, said, okay, we'll see you in 30 days, and they just left them. Now listen, the people who participated, in this show, they're incredibly skilled outdoorsmen and women. And they're outfitters, for different outfitting rigs. Some of them were hunters, very skilled hunters and trappers, and they had tons of experience out in the wild, and yet it never fails. Every single season they ran this, it only takes a few days before the first people start tapping out. I want out of here. I want out of this. They get lonely, they get hungry, they get disoriented, they got lost, they got bored, and it doesn't take long for something to break inside of them as they face the wilderness. Now, each season had a winner. Every single season had a winner, someone who survived the wilderness and made it the longest. And at the end of each season, do you know what never happened? This never happened, not once. It never happened. When the producers of the show walked up to the campsite of the person who lasted longest and they said, congratulations, you're the last one to make it. Here's your money. Are you ready to go? Not once did the person say, I'm gonna stay here. I think I'm good right here. I'm gonna just stay out here in the wilderness. That never happened. In fact, the only reason the premise of the show works is because you and I intuitively know that everyone from day one wants to get out of the wilderness, not stay in it. And here's why. If you were to do some research, go on Google and do some research about wilderness, let me tell you the words that would pop up the most to describe the wilderness. Words like this: uninhabited, empty or untraveled, uncharted territory. That's the wilderness. The wilderness is barren. The wilderness can be dangerous. The wilderness is lonely. The wilderness is a vast expanse of unknown terrain, uncharted territory. And you know what's interesting to me? It's interesting to me that oftentimes when we try to describe to people some of the most challenging seasons of our life, we dance around metaphors and images related to the wilderness. We say things like this, I don't know, man, I just feel, we're just in a valley right now. I just feel like I'm in a low place, I'm in a valley. You ever heard someone describe something like that? I don't know, I just feel lost in life right now. I can't find my way out of the woods on this. It just feels like we've got a mountain of debt in front of us, and it's hard to climb out of this. It just feels like I'm in a fog right now. I don't know, I just feel spiritually, I feel dry right now. It's all wilderness language. And the reality is that every single one of us here, we have all walked into seasons of life that feel a little bit like the wilderness. Moments in our life that we feel a little bit disoriented. There's no road signs pointing the way out. Moments in our life that we feel a little bit discouraged. We can't see our way out of it. Moments in our life that we feel a little bit alone. Moments in our life that we feel confused and overwhelmed. Have you ever felt like you were in the wilderness? A season of life that you really don't want to be in, and you definitely don't want to stay there. You know, just in the last few weeks, I'm talking like the last 14 days or so, I've had conversations. Let me tell you the conversations I've had with people. One of them was with someone who, they lost a loved one tragically and unexpectedly. If I were to tell you the details of how they lost him, your heart would be broken. That's a wilderness. I talked to someone who's concerned about the choices their adult child is making. And if you're a parent and you've ever felt that, you know that's a wilderness. I talked to someone who's confused about which career path they should take, feels like they're out in the wilderness. I talked to someone who's had their last few weeks completely upended because instead of going to work each day like they thought they were gonna be doing, they've actually been going to the hospital and sitting at the bedside of their child who was thrown into a sudden emergency. I talked to someone who thought that they were stepping out in faith to do something they believed God was leading to do, and yet they've hit roadblock after roadblock after roadblock in pursuing that. That feels like the wilderness. I talked to someone who lost their job unexpectedly. Here's my point, all right? This is my point. If you've ever felt like you're in the wild, if you're in the wilderness, you're not alone. You're not alone. You're surrounded by people here who know what it feels like to be dropped off in the wilderness. And sometimes this happens suddenly. Sometimes it feels like we enter into the wilderness in a split second. It's when you hear the words from your dad, maybe years ago when you were still a kid and you were settled in and you had friends and all that, and you hear your dad say, hey, we're moving. That's a wilderness. It disorients you a little bit. What do you mean? You hear the words, we're getting a divorce, and it throws you into a wilderness. You hear the words, I don't love you anymore and I'm leaving. You hear the words, we think mom's had a stroke. You hear the words, we're downsizing. And all of a sudden we're thrown into a wilderness of grief, the wilderness of unemployment, the wilderness of abandonment, the wilderness of being suddenly single. Sometimes it's sudden. Other times we end up in the wilderness gradually. It's small financial decisions that we made that end up digging a hole shovel by shovel until we look up and we realize, man, we're in deep. It's a general lack of purpose in life that we fall into. We don't really know how it happened. We just kind of drifted into an apathy that's set in over our life. It hangs over us like a weight. It's your sales at work slowly starting to go down, and you trend it quarter after quarter, but you really don't know how to turn it around. It feels like you're a little bit lost right now. You watch your parents slowly succumb to dementia. You cannot bear to look at one more pregnancy test that leaves your dreams for a family dashed. And there we are, in the wilderness, feeling lost and afraid and confused and angry and disoriented. It's the place in life that we don't want to be, and we definitely don't want to stay there. So here's the question that we're going to tackle and that we're going to grapple with over the course of these next few weeks in this series. The fundamental question is this: is it possible to walk through wilderness seasons of life and not lose hope? Is it possible to walk through wilderness seasons of life and still maintain joy and peace? Is it possible to face the reality of our fears and anxieties in the wild and yet still move forward with courage? Can we walk into the disorienting and disruptive wilderness and not only have our faith intact on the other side, but actually have our faith stronger? I want you to know it's possible. I want you to know it's possible. And in these next few weeks, we're gonna discover how. And we're gonna discover what God can do in the wild. You know, it always strikes me that if you were to read the Bible from cover to cover, if you just opened it up and started page 1 and went all the way to the back, you know, it would almost be impossible to ignore the amount of times that the wilderness becomes the setting for God's transformative work in our lives. It's all over the Bible. The wilderness actually is mentioned over 300 times in the Bible. It's mentioned in the Old Testament, it's mentioned in the Psalms, it's mentioned in the prophets, it's mentioned in the Gospels who write about Jesus, it's mentioned in the letters that come after that. It's mentioned all through the Bible. In fact, the wilderness is the setting for one of the most foundational stories in the scriptures. It's a story that has been referred to for centuries as the Exodus story. Now, Exodus just means exit. Kind of helpful to remember, kind of rhymes, right? So that's kind of easy, right? It means to exit or leave something behind. That's what an exodus is, which is, you know, fitting because this story is all about how God leads his people out of slavery to Egypt and brings them into freedom, into this new land he has for them. And so the reason I'm telling you that is because we're gonna camp out in this story, this Exodus story, throughout this series for these next few weeks. And today I wanna set us up by giving us a little bit of context. The Israelite people, the Hebrew people, they had been enslaved for over 400 years to the Egyptians. So let's go back to a little bit of ancient Near Eastern history here. Just stay with me for a second. But they had been enslaved to the Egyptians for over 400 years. And for all of those years, they cried out to God. They just poured their heart out to God. God, we want freedom. God, do something, please. And Exodus chapter 3 is a turning point. The book of Exodus, the second book in the Bible, it's a turning point as we see God responding to their cries by raising up a leader named Moses to free them. So God shows up to Moses and he says this, listen to this. Then the Lord told him, who's him? That's Moses. The Lord told Moses, he says, listen, now pay attention to here. He says, I have certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries of distress because of their harsh slave drivers. Yes, I am aware of their suffering. Now, I just want to pause here for a second and reflect on what is revealed about God's character here. You know, there is no cry you have ever cried that went unheard by God. He sees you. He hears you. He knows you. He understands what you are walking through. He understands what you have gone through. He understands what you're going through. When you walk through the darkest valley, he knows. When you grieve the deepest of grief, he hears. He knows. God says here that he is aware of their suffering. Some translations there say, I know their suffering. I know they're suffering. And when he says I know, he's not talking about like I know here. He's like, I know because I'm in it with them. I've walked it with them. You know, God is so intimate. This is what I want you to see. God is so intimate. He's so personal. He's not distant. God is not detached from you. You know, every now and then I'll hear people refer to guys like the big man upstairs. There's no big man upstairs, not revealed in the Bible. No, this God is completely opposite of that. This God is involved in our lives. This God is here. This God is close. This God is near. God is described as an experience as personal and real and intimate. He loves you beyond measure. And he walks with you. He knows your hurts and your pain. He knows your joys, and he knows what delights you. He knows what scares you and what makes you anxious. He knows you, and he wants to walk with you in relationship towards freedom and wholeness and new life. And he says to Moses, he says, I've seen, I've heard, and I'm aware. And then he says, I'm going to act. Look what he says next. He said, so because of that, I've come down to rescue them. It's time. I've come down to rescue them from the power of the Egyptians and lead them out of Egypt into their own fertile and spacious land. God is saying, I have something new. I've got something new. I have freedom for my people. I have healing for my people. I have good things for my people. And God is saying, you know how you've had to make it work in the desert for all these years? No, I'm gonna give you a fertile land now. You know how you've been cramped and had to live in those cramped spaces? No, I'm gonna give you a spacious land now. God is saying, I have the power and the strength to give you a new course for your life. Do you know that today? For you? That God has the power and strength to give you a new course for your life? To take you out of the land that you were living in that feels destructive, that feels hopeless, that feels barren. And he says, I have a new land I can take you into, a better place. God says, will you walk with me? I'll lead you there. And Moses hears from God, and he goes to Egypt. He follows through on what God is saying. He goes to Egypt to demand that Pharaoh was kind of the king of the Egyptians, and he demands that Pharaoh release the Israelites. And we're not gonna have a chance to read all this, but you should really read the book of Exodus and see what happens, because it's an amazing story. What happens through a series of these absolutely incredible events, God breaks the power of Pharaoh and the Egyptians, and Pharaoh agrees to let the people go. And so now the Israelites are free. And they start making their way to the promised land that God had for them. Now they get to step into freedom. But listen to this very unexpected twist in the story, this unexpected turn once they recognize and once they gain their freedom. Look what it says in Exodus 13. It says, when Pharaoh finally let the people go, listen to this, God did not lead them along the main road that runs through Philistine territory, even though that was the shortest route to the promised land. He doesn't take them that route. Let me take a quick poll. All of our locations right now, if you're watching online, you can take this poll as well. How many of you, when you travel, you're all about efficiency? It is all about making the best time. Do I have any people like that? All right, good. You're my people, okay. How many of you are like, just enjoy the trip, man? You know what I mean? That's how I imagine you talking. I don't know, but what's funny is those two opposites usually end up marrying each other, which is fun. Actually, for this one though, Jenny and I, we're totally aligned on this. Like, we both know trips aren't made to be enjoyed. Who told you that lie? They're made to be executed with absolute efficiency so we maximize our time. And our poor kids, man, they've had to suffer as a result. It's like, I can't tell how many times, it's like, oh, you gotta go potty? We only have 7 more hours, all right? Can you hold it? Those are real conversations. All right, all my efficiency people, does anybody else have like major trust issues with that little Google Maps person who tells you the shortest route somewhere? I don't trust them. I never listen. I'm always double, triple checking. You know what? I'm always looking. I'm like, you know what? If I just cut through this neighborhood right here, I can cut off 0.2 of a mile. Google Maps didn't tell me that. I mean, guys, I've driven down like 1-lane farm roads. I've cut through parking lots. I've cut across people's driveways. I think a yard once. Anything to just get the shortest route. And see, this is why I would have had some issues with God that day. What do you mean we're not taking the shortest route? I want out of here. I'm tired of Egypt. What do you mean we're not taking the shortest route? And then, see, at this point, I would have pulled out my little phone and I would have pulled up Google Maps and I would have grabbed Moses and I would have said, hey, I need to show you something. Let me show you a map. Let me show all of you a map real quick. This is actually, there was a road that ran in the northern part of Egypt along the Sinai Peninsula up into the Promised Land. This is actually the route that would have been the shortest. It was a coastal route which was widely known at that time. It was the direct route to go where they were hoping to go. It was actually known as the Via Maria, which means the way of the sea. Take this route, and in a matter of days, you're in the new land. The problem was that there were Egyptian military outposts along this route. And in addition to that, they would have had to walk through territory that at one point that belonged to the Philistines. And God knew something about the Israelites. He knew that as soon as they faced opposition, they would turn back. In fact, this is what God said. He explains why he's not gonna take them that road. He says, God said, here's why I'm not taking the shortest route, because if the people are faced with a battle, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. And I read that and I'm like, might change their minds about what, freedom? Like freedom? I mean, that's a remarkable statement right there. Because see, we read this story from afar and it's easy to go, who would be so dumb to run back to slavery? Who would be so dumb to run back to Egypt? Who would be so dumb to run back to slavery? You want the answer to that question? Scared people. Scared people would run back. See, Egypt, as bad as it was, it's what was known. It might be slavery, but it's all they knew. It's familiar territory. And sometimes familiar, no matter how destructive it might be, is more comfortable than stepping out into the unknown territory of freedom that God has for us. Before we get too judgy toward the Israelites, we run back to our own Egypts all the time. At least I do. We're always running back to our own Egypts. God wants to free you from the chains of sin. He wants to free you from the chains of sin. He wants to free you from the chains of apathy, from the chains of addiction. He longs to free you from that. He wants to free you from the chains of bitterness. He wants to free you from the chains of lying. But when we've lived with those things for so long, it's hard to imagine a life without them. It's our Egypt. And as compelling as freedom is, it can be scary because it means leaving behind the things that we've built our entire life on. And while we know here that they're destructive, we run back because at least they're familiar. Anybody ever run back to something you knew was destructive? See, God knows the human heart. He knows the human heart. And so he does something absolutely remarkable here as he leads his people to freedom. This is what God does. So because of that, God led them in a roundabout way. That's such a great phrase. He led them in a roundabout way. Where? Through the wilderness, toward the Red Sea. Thus the Israelites left Egypt like an army ready for battle. God led them not around the wilderness, but through the wilderness, right into the heart of it. In fact, as historians and archaeologists have pieced together some of this ancient story, this is the route that seems most likely that they took. Guys, that's a detour. That way by the sea we saw a moment ago that I showed you earlier, that would have taken a matter of days, as we'll see in the next coming weeks. This right here took years. The Israelites were not planning for this. And they didn't want this. They wanted the straight path. Why? Because what they wanted most was a change of scenery. Just get us out of Egypt. Just change our circumstances. Have you ever convinced yourself that a change of scenery is all you need to be happy? I just need to change the circumstances. I just need to change the scenery. If I just had a new job or a new spouse or a new home or a new title so I could get the respect. And yet, here's what happened. So many of us, we know this story. We could tell this story. So many of us, we got those things we thought we needed, that change of scenery. We got it. And it's not too long. Maybe a couple months. Maybe a couple years. But at some point, we're longing for something else. Why? Because although the scenery might have changed, we didn't. We never did. And as God led his people into a new land of freedom in his infinite wisdom, God is so wise. He knew that they needed something more than just a change of scenery. They needed new hearts. They had only ever known slavery. And he needs to show them that their value is not measured by how many bricks they could make in a single day. They had only ever relied on themselves. And God needs to show them that they can rely on him and trust him in everything. They had only ever looked out for their own self-interest. They were slaves. They had to. And God needs to open their hearts and their eyes to other people. See, we love the idea of a promised land. We want it. God, take me there. But the wilderness is where God prepares us to live in freedom as his people. It's in the wilderness that God transforms us. You know, when we looked at those words describing wilderness earlier, I threw up 3 little phrases. There's actually one other word that I didn't put up that comes up again and again. If you were to research, what is the wilderness? This is a word you're gonna see a lot. Uncultivated. I love that word. I love this idea. Uncultivated. The wilderness is fertile ground for something new to grow. You did not get a choice. You don't get a choice over the wild that you're gonna be thrust into in life. You don't get a choice over the wilderness. You don't get a choice over what you're gonna come your way, but you get to choose what grows. You get to choose what grows and who you become on the other side of it. The wilderness is where pain can grow into bitterness, or it can be transformed into empathy. It's uncultivated. What's gonna grow? The wilderness is where fear can grow into paralyzing anxiety about the future, or it can be transformed into courage. The wilderness is where loss can grow into despair, or it can be transformed into dependence. The wilderness is that place where failure can grow into shame, or it can be transformed into humility. It was in the wild where Paul, the Apostle Paul, one of the very first Christians, it was in the wilderness that he learned to be what he calls content in all things. That's what grew. It was in the wild that Elijah, the prophet Elijah, discovered that he was not alone. God was with him. It was in the wild that Hagar was seen by God and given a new name in the wilderness. It was in the wild where Moses discovered purpose and mission he had never tapped into. It was in the wild where Jacob wrestled and struggled with God and was blessed as a result. And it was in the wild where Jesus, God in the flesh, who stepped into our world, the ultimate expression of, I know. Because he came into our world and walked with us. The book of Hebrews says that there's no temptation you've ever faced that Jesus wasn't tempted with. There's nothing you've ever faced in your life that Jesus also didn't face in his life. He knows, he knows, he knows. And he was pulled out into the wilderness at one point and was tested on your behalf. And what did he discover? He was strengthened by the word of God. We don't have to settle for just enduring the wilderness seasons of life. If you want to know a bottom line really for this whole series, this is it right here. If you've checked out, just check back in for 1 second. You do not have to settle for just enduring the wilderness seasons of life. We can learn to embrace them as the fertile ground for God to grow something in us that could not have been grown any other way. See, the tragedy is not the wilderness. The wilderness moments, the seasons, that's not the tragedy. You know what the tragedy is? The tragedy is wasting it. That's the tragedy. It'd be that we waste it, that we come out on the other side of it unchanged. God says, I'm going to do something in you, not in spite of the wilderness season of your life, but through it. I'll lead you. Sometimes I'll lead you in ways that feel like roundabout ways. Because I have an end in mind for you that you can't see at the moment. I have a freedom for you that is so much greater than just a change of circumstances. I'm gonna change your heart. So today, if you feel like you're walking in a season of wilderness, a situation you're facing that you wish was different, I just want to encourage you today. I want to encourage you to pray a very courageous prayer. This is your take home for today, all right? This is the prayer of a person who doesn't want to waste the wild. And I'm gonna just tell you right now, it's a very hard prayer to pray. You might not want to pray it yet. It's hard. It's hard to pray what I'm about to show you. I'm just telling you that up front. But God can work in this prayer if we're courageous enough to pray it when we're in the wilderness. This is it. God, as long as you have me in it, in what? In the wild, in the wilderness. As long as you have me in it, help me to grow through it. God, as long as you have me in it, help me to grow through it. God, I don't like it. You don't have to like it. You don't have to lie to God. You don't have to be like, oh, I'm so glad I'm here. No, God, I wouldn't choose this. God, I don't like this. God, I don't want to be here. We can be honest with God. We don't have to pretend we like the wilderness we're in. This isn't a pull up your bootstraps and just suck it up. No, the wilderness is hard. And we don't have to like it. We can tell God that. We can say, God, I don't want to be in this season, but it doesn't really matter because I'm here. God, if I'm in it, then help me grow through it. Do something in me. Show me what needs transformed. Show me what needs made new. Show me where I lack trust, because a promised land is coming. It's coming. This won't last forever. And when that day comes, God, I want to be different. I want to know you more deeply. As a result of this right now, guys, I could point you right now, I could point you to countless people here at our church who have walked through unimaginable loss and confusion and disappointment and failure and rejection that sent them into a wilderness. And yet, I could tell you their stories. I could introduce you to them. They would tell you that while they would never choose it again, they wouldn't change it either. No, they'd never choose it. They didn't want to go, but they wouldn't change it. Why? Because it was there in the wilderness that they discovered what it meant to walk with God in a new way. It was there that their hearts were changed and their faith expanded and their hope renewed. So I have some bad news and I have some good news. Which one do you want first? It doesn't matter. I'm going to give you the bad news first, so you don't have to answer that. Here's the bad news. You're gonna have to go through it. It's coming. If you're not already in a wilderness season, it's coming. And you're gonna have to go through it. I wish you could go around it. I wish you could go around the wilderness, but the wilderness is coming if you're not already in it. So that's the bad news. You ready for the good news? Bad news, you're gonna have to go through it. Here's the good news. Ready? You're going to get through it. You are going to get through it. And there's someone here right now and you are barely hanging on. God placed you here today to hear this. You're going to get through it. Someone is here right now and you giving church one last shot this weekend. This was it. And you are struggling with hope. I want you to hear, you're going to get through it. You're going to get through it. I'm not promising that. That's a promise of God. Look what God said. This promise in the book of Isaiah. God's word to you is, for I am about to do something new. See, I've already begun. Do you not see it? I will make a pathway where? Through the wilderness. I will create rivers in a dry wasteland. Sometimes it's hard being up here because I get to see what you guys don't see, and I see a lot of tears right now. And that's why my voice cracks. And my guess is the tears are because of the wilderness that you're walking through. I don't know what wilderness you've walked through in the past or what wilderness you're walking through currently or what wilderness you will walk through in the future. I realize some of you, you're coming in today really hurting, really feeling lost and alone. Here's what I do know. I know this because it is God's word and God's word is true. No matter how dry and barren a landscape your life might feel right now, God has never abandoned you. He has never left your side. He's with you in the wild, cutting a pathway through the wilderness, asking you today, will you stay with me? Just stay with me. Just stay with me. Because he tells us he's about to do something new. Can you see it? A new work, a transformative work, a healing work, a freeing work, not once you get through the wilderness, but right now as he leads you through it. I want to ask all of our musicians, our bands, to come out at our different locations right now because I actually want I want them to sing truth over you right now. Sometimes music just engages the heart. I want them to sing these words over you. For any of you walking in the wilderness today, we want to remind you right now that God has not left you behind. We want to encourage you, no matter what season you find yourself in right now, to be strong and courageous. Don't run back to Egypt. Don't go back. Don't run back to what you've known. Don't lose heart. Don't lose hope, because God is with you in the wild.